headquarters of ITN, News at 10, with Trevor McDonald.
British Army rundown slammed by MPs in leaked report. Serbs fight back in Croatia and retake lost land. Passive smoker wins £15,000 compensation. And making up is easy if you're expected to, and it's in public. Good evening. ITN learned tonight that the government is coming under fierce attack by the Common Select Committee on Defence for running down the army too far and too fast. One MP said the report will be devastating. ITN has seen a copy of its conclusions, which are due to be published in 2 weeks' time. The committee will say the army is already overstretched and the government should think again about cutting 40,000 men under the Options for Change programme. Our political editor, Michael Brunson, reports.
The Defence Committee's angry conclusions are all the more powerful because they are unanimous, and the 11 members of the committee, drawn from all the main parties, certainly do not mince their words. For a start, they call for an immediate halt to the amalgamation of regiments, Scottish regiments like the Gordon Highlanders among them. Those plans produced a wave of protests when announced last summer. The official line is that by 1995 all will be well, but the committee say that if the full reduction of 40,000 is implemented, chronic overstretch will be the normal state of affairs unless the government's proposals are modified. And the report continues, the mismatch of the Army's resources and commitments looks set to continue after 1995. That borne out by evidence to the committee today when MOD officials said that Britain was asked to provide ground troops to work alongside these Americans in Operation Restore Hope in Somalia, but could not do so, given, for example, our present commitments in Bosnia. And as the Foreign Secretary made clear today, Britain cannot go on accepting more and more Bosnia-style commitments.
Obviously, we can't be everywhere, and we can't do everything. Our diplomacy is now undermanned compared to that of our main colleagues and competitors. Our armed forces are already stretched. The figures are formidable.
Stretched above all by the continuing need for high numbers of soldiers like these on patrol today in Northern Ireland. That, in the Defence Committee's view, is the real problem. Recently, Northern Ireland Office ministers successfully appealed over Defence Secretary Malcolm Rifkin's head directly to the Prime Minister for 2 extra battalions for duty in the province, adding to overstretch elsewhere. In addition, Options for Change talks of units facing emergency duty in Ulster once every 2 years. The average is already 15 months, and of that the committee says that there has been an unacceptable contraction of emergency tour intervals.
Check your safety catch.
That in turn has led to vital senior NCOs fed up with far tougher conditions of service in the army, leaving in growing numbers. All part of a wider problem of a severe manpower shortage, at least 2 battalions short, the committee says. And one former top soldier says he's far from surprised at its findings.
The previous report was critical. Things have got worse since then because we've had continuation of cuts and more contingencies have been put on the army.
Tonight, sources close to the Defence Secretary, Mr. Rifkind, are saying that he will persist with Options for Change unchanged unless or until there is such a radical alteration of Britain's defence commitments that a review is necessary. Michael Brunson, News at 10 at the Ministry of Defence.
The new Clinton administration is tonight reviewing American policy on Bosnia. The administration has asked for reports on the possibility of bombing Serb airfields and lifting the arms embargo against the Muslim government side. Civil war continued today in Bosnia and in Croatia. Here's our diplomatic editor, Edward Sturton.
Nearly a week of steady advance by Croatian forces, but the smoke hanging over Krajina today bore witness to a battle in which the tide could be turning. Serb irregulars today staged a counter-offensive, and with some success. As Croatian wounded began arriving in the hospital at Zadar, villages which only this morning were in Croatian hands were being retaken by the Serbs. The presence of United Nations troops did nothing to stop the fighting. The positions they had established to preserve the ceasefire proved no deterrent. And tonight it's reported that more than 20 of them have been taken prisoner in a hotel. The struggle for Krajina is a straightforward battle between Croats and Serbs for control of a territory to which both sides lay claim. The picture in the neighbouring war in Bosnia today is a more complicated one. At Busovaca, fighting between Croats and Muslims cut off the main route for humanitarian aid, while in Sarajevo, the battle between Serbs and Muslims moved into a new phase. The bombardment of the city was reported to be the heaviest for 4 months. As so often before, the renewed ferocity of the attack coincided with a visit from a distinguished outsider. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Mrs. Ogata, could offer little comfort to the people of Sarajevo. Tonight, another 6 of their number are reported dead, another 50 injured. Though the city's defenders did score one success with a direct hit on a Serb ammunition dump. The day left the peace process in Geneva looking pretty ragged, and the Bosnian president, Alija Izetbegović, seemed on the verge of pulling out. He did agree a truce with the leadership of Bosnia's Croats, but that was probably simply so that the two of them could fight more effectively against the Serbs.
It's been deadlocked today. We've not really made much progress. But at the end of the day, and that may well come towards the weekend, we will put together a package and we'll go to the Security Council, a comprehensive package covering constitution, ceasefire, the map, and the interim government. And we'll ask the world to make up its mind. And if anybody's got a better plan, good luck to them.
Anyone could mean the new American president, whose officials are currently assessing every option, from the use of air power to relaxing the arms embargo against Bosnia. No decisions yet, but he has promised that America will play a more active role in the crisis.
Downing Street has issued a statement denying a report about the Prime Minister and the Lady, which is carried in tomorrow's edition of the New Statesman and New Society magazine. It said the suggestions covered in the article are completely untrue. That is a statement of fact. Tonight, the Prime Minister's press secretary, Gus O'Donnell, who's in India with Mr. Major, took the unusual step of issuing a statement in his own name. Mr. O'Donnell, who normally briefs journalists anonymously under what's known as lobby rules, said the allegations are completely untrue. Our political correspondent, Joe Andrews, is in Westminster. Joe, why did Downing Street and Mr. O'Donnell take this unusual step?
I think for the plain reason of making it absolutely clear in London that there's absolutely no truth in the allegations in the article. I understand from India that the Prime Minister is extremely angry about the report and he wants to make it crystal clear that there's no truth in them. I have to say the article has got quite wide circulation now in London, so it was clear that Downing Street did need to act. These rumours about the Prime Minister's private life have been circulating in London since the time that he became the Conservative Party leader. There's never been any evidence produced in support of them, and indeed this article hasn't produced any either. And I have to say that it's going to add some highly explosive fuel to the report, to the discussions about privacy. A number of Tory MPs are very angry about these reports.
Joe Andrews at Westminster, thank you. Bugging private telephone calls is an invasion of privacy. That's what the Press Complaints Commission said in their report this evening on the so-called Camillagate tapes. There's nothing more the Commission can do. Neither the Prince of Wales nor Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles complained. ITN's Norman Rees reports.
Camillagate one first.
A 4-hour meeting, a 9-line statement. The Commission deplored the publication and the bugging, manifestly an invasion of privacy.
Obtaining information in that way is absolutely repugnant to everyone's sense of what is proper.
The Commission called for changes in the law to define the boundaries of publishing and obtaining clandestine material.
We are not a police force. We are not the security authorities. We cannot inquire as to who did it or why and obtain satisfactory answers.
Prince Charles had declined the Commission's invitation to complain about the alleged intrusion into his private life following publication in 4 British newspapers.
I explained fully the reasons why I decided to publish. I still stand by those reasons. I respect the PCC's decision, but I disagree with it.
Will you be apologising?
No, because I don't believe I have anything to apologise for.
Privately, some Commission members believe the government is overlooking something far more sinister than the behaviour of a few newspapers. A year after the existence of these tapes was known about, there's still been no official inquiry into who is bugging these alleged royal conversations and why. Norman Rees, News at 10 at the Press Complaints Commission.
The first British compensation award for the effects of passive smoking was made today. It could lead to a flood of complaints. Stockport Council agreed to give £15,000 to one of its workers. Veronica Bland says she contracted bronchitis because she had to sit with colleagues who between them smoked 150 cigarettes a day. Here's our health editor Lawrence McGinty.
This could soon be a thing of the past. Lighting a cigarette in your office or factory could be outlawed if the political pressure against smoking in public, fueled by today's announcement, becomes as sharp as some observers predict. This banking centre where smokers can puff away is unusual nowadays. 4 out of 5 employers already impose restrictions on smoking at work.
If you sit next to a heavy smoker, you have no choice at all. They've decided that your health is going to suffer.
As a non-smoker who used to smoke quite a lot, I would think it's very unfair to force people to do something they can't do.
If people don't like it, they have the ability to move away from it. So I don't really think it's that much of an issue here.
It was an issue for Veronica Bland, who sued Stockport Council after working in their smoking offices for more than 10 years. Today, she said she inhaled smoke from 150 cigarettes a day, and it ruined her health.
The coffee's with me all the time. It never goes away. Every morning it takes at least an hour to settle it before I can do anything else. And I expect to have it for the rest of my life.
Stockport Council banned smoking 3 years ago, and campaigners say that will now increasingly happen in workplaces.
We now expect employers to move today to either restrict or ban smoking completely in the workplace. We also expect a flood of similar claims from non-smokers.
But as this Science Museum exhibition shows, estimating the risks of passive smoking is controversial. The smokers' lobby Forest calls this junk science and says there's no evidence passive smoking is harmful. Government experts disagree. They say the number of deaths from lung cancer every year caused by smoking is around 32,000. The number dying from lung cancer caused by passive smoking is about 300. Small but significant. Tonight, Forest accused the anti-smoking lobby of scaremongering about these risks.
We're seeing people literally terrified just because they may see a bit of wafting smoke in the air, when there is, certainly when you go back to the original research studies, there is no need.
Nevertheless, the pressure is now very definitely on smokers to curb their habit in public.
Coming next on News at 10, a new survey on AIDS reports a big increase across the world. How witch doctors in Africa are helping to stop its spread. The latest figures on mortgage arrears, the number of people who can't pay is up. And Focus on Britain investigates telephone chat lines and why the companies who run them aren't too keen to talk.
Get out! Get out! Get out! 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 Out!
Come on, United! Come on, United! You big guild bomb! Despite the atrocious conditions, McLaughlin scores 2 goals to secure a place in the third round for United. What we need is a really good centre-half. Someone big.
Oh, hi, Gramps. Dad, they won.
Yeah! Rubbish. Marshall was the best centre-half we ever had, you know? Never. Big girl's blouse, he was.
Open your eyes to a different kind of car. Stretch your imagination to Espace versatility. Turn your thoughts to Espace innovation. Broaden your vision to the Renault Espace.
There are 2 ways to ensure a secure future. One of them is to take out a personal pension plan with AXA Equity and Law. Unfortunately, I chose the other one.
AXA Equity and Law. Need we say more?
Do you know, there was a time when I couldn't have enjoyed these. I was smoking 20 cigarettes a day. Now I've actually given up. But I couldn't have done it without Nicotinell patches. I really do feel fantastic.
Over 4 million smokers have used Nicotinell, the 24-hour nicotine patch. If you're determined to give up, it needn't be hell with Nicotinell.
Did you know you can get £180 off last-minute winter holidays at Lampolly? Get away. Really?
The BT Euro Special. In January, from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., a 4-minute call to any EC country is reduced to 99p.
A new report on HIV and AIDS says the epidemic is accelerating and only a global strategy will contain it. The report from the Harvard University Press, and the most comprehensive so far, says 48 million people worldwide could be HIV positive by the end of the decade. It expects the number in sub-Saharan Africa to rise from under 8 million now to 11.5 million in 1995 and more than 20 million by the year 2000. In rural South Africa, traditional healers, witch doctors, have now joined the campaign against AIDS, as our correspondent Jeremy Thompson reports.
In the villages of South Africa, they're calling up the spirits. The Sangomas, the traditional healers, are appealing for help from the ancestors as they search for an answer to the most modern of medical challenges, AIDS. 80% of black Africans consult a traditional healer when they're sick. Few would dream of going to a Western doctor. It's the main reason why international AIDS organizations are taking the Sangomas seriously, enlisting their help to fight the disease through education and prevention.
Potentially, they've probably got a more influential role to play than most other efforts, most other media, for example, most other kinds of health workers. They are very powerful people in their communities.
In South Africa's tribal homelands, ignorance and lack of information has allowed AIDS to spread unchecked. Until the health workshops began, even the traditional healers knew little about the disease. Few had even seen a condom before. But as the Sangomas learn to overcome the taboos, it's hoped they can help change the social and sexual habits of their patients.
This disease is not easy, as we hope that we are going to cure it. We must not say that. What is very important is prevention of this disease.
Though this seems a primitive form of medicine, it may turn out to be the best hope South Africa has of combating the rapid spread of AIDS amongst the black communities.
While they still seek their inspiration from nature, these old-style doctors are keen to prove they do have a role alongside modern medicine in the battle against AIDS. Jeremy Thompson, News at 10, South Africa.
Here, more people than ever got behind with their mortgage repayments last year, but figures out today show the number of homes repossessed fell, though not by much. 190 families a day still lost their homes. Here's our economics correspondent, Greg Wood.
Third and last time, sold 32,250.
The end of the line for a few hundred more repossessed houses. Lenders have 65,000 to get rid of. They claim many more would have gone the way of this house last year if they hadn't been more sympathetic to those with payment problems. But that means more people in arrears. This couple haven't paid their mortgage since 1990. Their lenders are running out of patience.
They don't want to know. Then I've told them that I'm unemployed, my business went down, but apparently they're not interested.
The number of homeowners in the same predicament has risen sharply. In 1991, there were 276,000 people more than 6 months behind with their mortgage repayments. Last year, that figure jumped to 352,000.
There's a strong likelihood that repossessions in 93 will be higher than in 92, and there is no doubt that repossessions are going to plague us for many more years to come.
Lenders deny that arrears are just repossessions waiting to happen. They claim the worst is now over, provided interest rate cuts are not reversed. But they stand accused of not passing the full benefit of rate cuts on to borrowers. Since last May, base rates have fallen from 10 to 6%. The fall in mortgage rates has been smaller, from 10.7 to just under 8%. The gap has been widening. Mortgage rates are now 2% higher than base rates.
People are becoming more aware that they're not getting the cuts fed through to them, either quickly or in full. And I think the banks and building societies have got to listen to this kind of criticism and play fair with their customers.
Half of the savings in building societies are held by people over 55. For many of those people, it's their main source of income. And that's something that building societies are very conscious of when setting their interest rates.
I mean, that's a new place, but it's been built in an old style.
The usual estate agent's patter doesn't move many houses these days, but the best hope for a solution to the housing market's problems is that the latest interest rate cut will tempt buyers back into the market.
With the interest rates the way they were then, it didn't seem to make any sense to get back into the housing market. But now I believe that we can invest some money in a house and hopefully get our return from it that we expect.
Lenders warn today that there's now little scope for mortgage rates to fall much further, even if the Chancellor cuts interest rates again. If that doesn't turn viewers into buyers, it's hard to see what will.
Tonight's Focus on Britain looks at the controversy over telephone sex lines. Last week, Labour MP Terry Lewis tried, unsuccessfully, to get them banned by law. He argued that women are morally corrupted by callers and financially exploited by their employers. The man in charge of regulating chat lines, Sir Louis Blom-Cooper, says tough measures do exist, but he admits there's nothing to stop a company which has been closed down from opening up new sex lines. So, should sex lines be banned? Tonight's Focus on Britain on how to control the growing business in telephone sex. The reporter is Caroline Kerr.
Hello, my name's Julia, and I think you're going to be surprised at what I've got in store for you.
Every day in Britain, thousands of callers use one-to-one sex chat lines for live conversation on so-called adult subjects.
You talk about sex?
We can't talk about sex.
Nina is afraid of being identified. She's a single mother who worked on a chat line to supplement her income. She was paid $2.75 an hour. Many earn less.
Some of you get on the phone saying what they want to do to you, and it's not nice things what they want to do to you. Perverts, and there was into pain where they used to want to cut themselves with a razor blade, and kids in the background.
For companies running chat lines, it's a lucrative business, but few are prepared to talk openly about it.
We want to talk to you about the chat line you're running in here.
At all the companies we visited, we met the same response.
Company shouldn't be in the building.
A refusal to discuss guidelines which are supposed to regulate the industry. A freelance journalist who's investigated chat lines agreed to apply for a job at one company. We recorded what the employer said to her.
You do talk sex and you don't. You talk us on a borderline business. They ask you what you're wearing, you just tell them a load of lies. The name of the game in the business is to keep them on the phone as long as you can.
Afterwards, we tried to speak to the staff.
We understand you're running a chat line here, is that right?
No, it's not.
You just said that you're running a chat line. You've just told our... Get out! Get out! Get out! 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 Out!
Minutes later, they came out to make sure we were going.
Hey!
The company wouldn't talk on camera, but in a phone interview with us, they insisted the women who worked for them were allowed to terminate all obscene calls.
Anything basically that gets out of hand, if it's of a sexual or abusive nature or offensive in any kind of shape or form, they must terminate.
There is a watchdog body which tries to regulate the chatline industry. Here they examine chatline tapes for evidence of obscenity and can close down companies found guilty. Even live conversation services which are not sex lines are regulated by the watchdog, like this tarot card line in Glasgow. Every call must be recorded and tapes submitted on demand. A spokesman for live chat lines says legitimate companies are already too heavily controlled.
These are the regulations. This is what we are currently faced with. I think there's enough.
At Westminster, there are MPs who disagree entirely with that view, although a recent attempt to tighten the law on chat lines failed. Even those who accept that these phone services are now here to stay are anxious there should be adequate protection for the women who work in the industry, and indeed for the callers, who can sometimes run up bills of thousands of pounds.
It may never be possible to police chat lines thoroughly, Meanwhile, the companies who run them keep ringing up the profits.
Hi guys, you're through to the best live one-to-one chat line in the UK. And remember, this is strictly an adult line.
Caroline Kerr, News at 10, London.
At the moment, phone customers can tell BT they don't want to have access to chat lines. One option some campaigners want is for all phone users to be automatically denied access unless they specifically request it. Sports news tonight. David Gower fans among the ranks of the MCC were outvoted tonight. They'd called a special meeting to discuss the exclusion of the golden boy of English cricket from this winter's tour of India. They wanted a vote of no confidence in the England selectors. In the end, that was defeated by a margin of 3-2. And finally, those arch-enemies of the air, Lord King and Richard Branson, met tonight and they smiled. They tried to put the BA Dirty Tricks campaign behind them for an awards ceremony which must have sorely tested Lord King's good humour, because Virgin Atlantic swept the board.
The Clash of the Titans or David meets Goliath, face to face for the first time, and they talked about their waistlines.
You put on weight? No, don't worry. I look at the sandwich.
And on the more fundamental question of a final settlement.
Richard, this way.
How easy do you think it'll be to resolve the differences between the two airlines?
If we knew, we'd tell you.
Well, you should know though, shouldn't you?
I think... Richard. No, well, I mean, obviously we're going to do our best over the next few days to try to sort all this out once and for all. And
no real clues there. BA still hasn't answered any of the key questions.
What's behind the Dirty Tricks campaign?
Until Lord King is sure that you win.
No answers tonight either. We still don't know who organised it, who knew, and if BA directors didn't know, why not? It was the briefest of encounters. It's not been a good month for the world's favourite airline. Virgin Atlantic were flying high with 4 awards tonight, including the coveted Airline of the Year. Joan Perkettle, News at 10, Central London.
And that's News at 10 tonight. I'll be here again tomorrow. Until then, good night.
Hello, good evening. Well, at least it's fairly mild, but there's little to cheer in the rest of the forecast. It's also going to be fairly cloudy, with more rain to come for most of us at times during the day tomorrow. There's still some rain around tonight, of course. A lot of cloud for virtually everyone. Low, misty grey cloud with fog patches around the coasts and hills and outbreaks of rain and drizzle almost anywhere. But the heavier rain and bursts of snow that have affected the far north of Scotland, they'll move away overnight, leaving some clear spells and perhaps a slight frost for that corner of Britain. That's where the temperatures will be lowest tonight, certainly, with perhaps a minimum around 0 degrees tonight, so icy patches on some of the roads. For the rest of us, though, where it's staying cloudy, relatively mild, temperatures no lower than about 8 or 9 degrees, but very murky with it. On to tomorrow, where you get clear spells in the northeast tonight. You should get some sunny spells to start the day tomorrow. But it really won't last very long. You'll soon be joining the rest of us in a grey and cloudy day as the cloud spreads back northeastwards with more rain as well. Most of us seeing some bursts of rain at some stage during the day tomorrow, but later in the afternoon, the far west of Ireland brightening up just a touch. The best news, though, is definitely the temperatures. It's up around 10 or 11 degrees for many people tomorrow, so that just makes it into the 50s Fahrenheit. So mild, but that's about the best we can say for it. Good night.
Good evening. The headlines on Meridian Late. Nuclear power station knocked out by a shoal of sprats. Is this the region's most run-down school? And Bert the Barmy Barbel, who keeps getting caught. It's been revealed that both reactors at Dungeness Nuclear Power Station were knocked out by a shoal of sprats. Dungeness A power station in Kent was immobilised when they swam into the cooling system. Hugh Kirby has the details.
The sound of a major alert at Dungeness A nuclear power station. Not enough seawater to cool the turbines. Result, the reactors are shut down. And this is the reason. A shoal of tiny fish clogs seawater intakes that must deliver 20 million gallons an hour. The sad but simple truth is that this high-tech industry is defenceless when faced with this, the humble sprat.
There is a sprat season, we are alerted to that, but once they decide to swim into our cooling water intake system, there's not a great deal we can do other than to shut the plant down.
Damage to sprat-clogged screens runs into tens of thousands of pounds, but the real cost stems from a 3-day shutdown. 24,000 megawatts of lost electricity. But half a mile down the road, they pray for precisely that.
Yeah, the pound of sprats as well.
Nice sized sprats at the moment.
The sprats that escaped Dungeness are now on special offer.
Good value. There's plenty of them at the moment. And they're so versatile. The oil's good for you, good for smoking. General all-round fish, you know.
Unless, of course, they clog your cooling pipes.
I am not a great fan of the sprat, no.
This is the 5th time in its 27-year life that Dungeness has been closed by the tiny invader. The good news for managers is that the 1993 sprat season is now nearly over.
A 28-year-old Sussex man has been killed by a falling tree cut down by his own father. Alan Boddy and his father Dave ran a family landscaping business at Birch Grove near Lindfield. They were felling a fir tree together when the accident happened. News is coming in of a fire at a farm in East Sussex. 20 firemen are at the scene of the blaze in Chilsham Lane near Hurstmonceux. The farmhouse is well alight, although it's understood that nobody has been hurt. The largest primary school in Sussex is falling apart. The roof leaks, the walls are soaking wet, and yet rebuilding work at Grovelands in Hailsham isn't due to start for another year. Gavin Hill reports.
The classroom's full, so children are taught in the corridor. This part of the school was built in 1933. Its lifespan then was 15 years, and still it stands, but only just. Now in 1993, roofs leak, walls have holes and shake in high winds, the old toilets are cold and drafty, and wastewater flows into open drains. Decay and damp is everywhere.
Leaks, rotting fabric, splintering from the floors, basically all the things you would expect from a structure, a temporary structure that is very old.
Despite the dilapidation, Grovelands is a popular school. 600 children come here, more want to but can't because there isn't the room. Further stopgap repairs to the school are out of the question. Next week, East Sussex Council's Policy and Resources Committee meets to decide if £3.5 million should be spent on new buildings before an ill wind brings Grovelands tumbling down.
The two Thanet MPs have asked local councils whether they'd be prepared to pay towards a civilian rescue helicopter. The RAF rescue helicopter pulls out of Manston next year. Now Roger Gale and Jonathan Aitken have approached several East Kent councils to ask if they'd be willing to pay £2.5 million a year towards a private service. A Kent company has been awarded a £20 million government grant to turn waste paper into newsprint. The cash will go towards a £260 million project at SCA based at Aylesford. The expansion will create 100 jobs and safeguard 300 others. And now the River Medway's answer to the Loch Ness Monster. A barmy barbel called Bert is not only one of the biggest fish in the water, he's also